All right. Welcome to another narration of mine. So I'm sitting here, hands shaking, trying to type this out on my phone while hiding in my car. I'm parked a few blocks from my apartment, just watching the street, even though I know it's probably pointless. I feel like I just watched something I wasn't supposed to. Something that cracked open the whole damn world. And now it's staring back at me. You guys know me from my usual posts. The weird true crime stuff. The local urban legends. The occasional story about something spooky that happened in my shitty apartment building. But this isn't a story. This is real life. And it's fucked. It happened maybe an hour ago. I was coming home from my night shift. I work at the convenience store, the one on Elm Street. It was a typical Tuesday night. Some drunk regulars, a few teenagers buying Red Bull. Nothing out of the ordinary. The usual soul-crushing monotony. I was walking down Maple Avenue, the shortcut through that residential area, earbuds in, listening to some true crime podcast about a serial killer who targeted people walking alone at night. Yeah, I know. Ironic as hell. It was dark, streetlights humming, crickets doing their thing. The air was thick and humid. One of those nights where you can almost taste the ozone before a storm. That's when I saw him. A guy, maybe late 30s, standing under a flickering street light about half a block ahead of me. He was wearing a gray hoodie, pulled up, and dark jeans. Nothing weird about that, right? But he was just standing there, completely still. Not on his phone, not smoking, not waiting for anyone, just frozen. I thought maybe he was drunk or high, just zoning out. I've seen enough of that at the store. So I just kept walking, trying to give him a wide berth. But as I got closer, something felt off. Like, really off. The street light above him was flickering, right? But it wasn't just flickering on and off. It was like the light itself was having a seizure. And then it started affecting him. His outlines, man, they started to blur. You know when you're watching an old, messed up VHS tape and the picture gets all wavy and distorted? It was like that. His edges, the lines of his body, they were waving. And then his whole body started to stutter, like his head would snap a few inches to the left, then immediately snap back. His arm would twitch, like a glitch in a video game character animation. It wasn't a human movement. It was jerky, mechanical, completely unnatural. And there was no sound coming from him. No grunt, no gasp. Just this silent, fucked up dance under the flickering light. I pulled my earbuds out. My heart was pounding like a drum solo in my chest. I slowed down, trying to process what the hell I was seeing. My mind was racing, trying to find a normal explanation. Drunk? Seizure? Some elaborate prank? But this wasn't like anything I'd ever witnessed. Then, the street lights along the block, the ones further down, started doing it too. Flickering. And the air, it felt heavy. Like static electricity was building up, making the hairs on my arms stand on end. I could almost hear a low, buzzing hum, not from the lights, but from everywhere. The guy, his eyes, he slowly, painstakingly slowly, turned his head towards me. His eyes were wide open, totally unfocused, like he was looking through me, not at me. And they weren't blinking, not even once, just staring. And then his jaw dropped. Not like a normal mouth opening. It was like a rusty hinge, slow and creaking, but silent. And it kept dropping. It went past where a normal human jaw should go, hanging open at an impossible angle, like it was dislocated. And out of his mouth, nothing came out, but the inside of his mouth was wrong. It wasn't dark. It was glowing faintly, a sickly yellow light. And I swear to God, I could see what looked like wires or thin, metallic fibers pulsating inside, like looking into the back of an old, broken television. I froze. I couldn't move. My feet were cemented to the asphalt. My brain was screaming at me to run, but my body was just paralyzed. Then, his entire body started to vibrate. Not like shaking, but like a tuning fork. A rapid, almost invisible oscillation, and the blurring got worse. He started to look transparent in places. I could almost see the brick wall behind him through his shoulder, and the colors on his hoodie, the gray, it started to shift, bleeding into weird purples and greens, like corrupted pixels on a screen. And that's when the smell hit me. Not a human smell, not like piss or booze or sweat. It was a metallic, burnt smell, like old electronics frying, mixed with something else, something foul and biological, like burnt hair and bad meat. It was sickening. He started to make a noise then. It wasn't a scream. It was a high-pitched, garbled static, like a radio tuned between stations, but with a human groan buried underneath it. It was scraping at my ears, making my teeth ache. And then, just as fast as it started, it snapped back. The flickering streetlight went solid. The blurring on his body stopped. The impossible jaw snapped shut with a wet click that I somehow heard over the static in my ears. The colors normalized. He was just a guy in a hoodie again, standing under a streetlight. Except he wasn't. he was still frozen. But his eyes, the wide, unblinking ones, were now staring directly at me. And there was a flicker in them. Not the light. Something else. Recognition. Or something worse. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, perfectly still, watching me. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to my bones, that he knew I had seen it. I had seen him break. I had seen the world break around him. I finally snapped out of it. I didn't walk. I ran. I sprinted the rest of the way home, fumbling with my keys, tearing open the apartment door, and just slamming it shut behind me. I locked every deadbolt, every chain. I'm hiding in my car now because I don't feel safe in my own goddamn apartment. What the hell did I just witness? Was that guy having a seizure? And my brain just made up all that other shit because I was tired and listening to a creepy podcast? Or did I just see someone glitch out of reality? And if so, what does that make the rest of us? I need to figure this out. I've never believed in this Matrix shit before. But what if it's real? What if we're all just programs? And what if that guy, what if he was trying to warn me? I have more to tell you guys. I'm going to try to piece together what happened next, and what I think he might have been. I didn't sleep. Not for a second. I spent the rest of the night sitting in the driver's seat of my car, staring at the rearview mirror until the sun started to peek over the horizon. Every time a car drove past, I ducked. Every time a leaf blew against the windshield, I nearly pissed myself. When I finally got the courage to go back into my apartment to grab a change of clothes, things got way worse. I live in a studio, so it's not like there are many places to hide. I walked in, heart hammering against my ribs, and the first thing I noticed was the smell. It was that same burnt circuit board and rotting steak smell from the night before. But it was faint, like it was coming through the vents. I went to the kitchen to splash some water on my face, and that's when I saw the glitch had followed me home. Not the guy, but the effect. I looked at my toaster. Just a regular, cheap-ass, stainless steel toaster. But as I stared at it, the reflection on the side started to peel. Not the metal, but the image of the kitchen reflected in it. The reflection of my cabinets was sliding down the side of the toaster like wet paint. But the cabinets behind me were perfectly still. I reached out to touch it, and my hand didn't feel metal. It felt like static. It was vibrating so fast, it made my fingernails ache, like when you hit a funny bone, but it doesn't stop. I backed away, tripping over my rug. And that's when I heard it. A wet, slurping sound coming from the bathroom. I didn't want to look. I swear to God, every horror movie instinct told me to bolt. But it's my fucking house, you know? I grabbed a heavy glass candle from the coffee table and crept toward the bathroom door. The door was cracked open. I pushed it with the tip of my shoe. My roommate, Dave, was standing at the sink. At least, I think it was Dave. He was shirtless, leaning over the basin. But his back, Jesus, his back was wrong. There were these rectangular patches of skin that were missing, not like he'd been cut, but like the texture hadn't loaded in. It was just flat, gray voids where his muscles should be. No blood, no bone, just nothingness. "Dave?" I whispered. My voice sounded like it was underwater. He didn't turn around. He started to brush his teeth, but he wasn't holding a toothbrush. He was just scrubbing his gums with his bare index finger, over and over, so hard that the skin on his finger was stripping off in gray, bloodless ribbons. "Dave, stop, man. What the hell are you doing?" He finally turned, and I dropped the candle. Dave didn't have a face anymore. It was like someone had taken a Photoshop smudge tool and just dragged it from his forehead to his chin. His eyes were stretched out slits of white, and his nose was just a smooth mound of flesh. But his mouth was a perfectly circular hole, and inside, that same yellow light from the guy on the street was pulsing. He looked at me, or where he should have looked at me, and he made that sound, that garbled radiostatic groan. But this time, I could make out words through the interference. It sounded like a corrupted audio file. Resource? Exhausted. Then, his arms started to stutter, just like the guy under the streetlight. His elbow snapped back and forth at a 90-degree angle. Crack, 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 like a broken toy. Every time it snapped, a piece of the bathroom wall behind him would flicker into a different color. Neon pink, then deep black, then a grid of white lines. I scrambled backward, hitting the wall in the hallway. I watched as Dave, or whatever that thing was, started to sink into the floor. Not like a hole opened up, but like he was clipping through the geometry of a video game. His legs disappeared into the hardwood, then his waist, then his chest. He didn't even look distressed. He just kept scrubbing his faceless mouth with his finger until his head sank below the floorboards. I stood there for 5 minutes, staring at the spot where he vanished. The floor was solid. No holes, no marks. I checked his bedroom. His bed was made. His phone was on the nightstand. I called his number. I could hear it ringing inside the floorboards right where he had disappeared. That's when I realized this isn't some conspiracy theory or some fun internet mystery. People are being deleted, or the system is running out of memory, and it's starting to compress us. I grabbed my bag and ran. I'm back in the car. I've been driving for 2 hours. But here's the most fucked up part. I've passed the same gas and go station 4 times. I've been driving in a straight line on the highway for 60 miles. But every 15 miles, the same red Toyota with a cracked taillight passes me, and the same billboard for a local lawyer appears on the right. The map is looping. I'm trapped in a localized sector, and the textures are starting to fail. I'm looking at my own hands right now. My left pinky is starting to flicker. It's turning transparent, and I can see the car's steering wheel through my own flesh. It doesn't even hurt. It just feels cold. I didn't crash the car. I couldn't. Every time I gripped the steering wheel to swerve into a divider, my hands would just slide through the plastic, like my physical collision was turned off. I'm currently sitting in the middle of a playground in some suburban neighborhood I don't recognize, though it looks exactly like every other street I've passed in the last 3 hours. Part 3 is where the simulation stops being a glitch and starts being a slaughterhouse. The looping stopped about an hour ago, but not because I got out. The map just gave up. I drove past a row of houses, and the houses just stopped existing. To my left, there's just a flat, gray void that stretches on forever. No sky, no ground, just a matte, gray nothing that makes my eyes ache if I look at it too long. I got out of the car because the engine sound was looping a 3-second clip over and over until I felt like my brain was going to bleed. I started walking toward the only house that looked rendered. The front door was wide open. I walked in, calling out for anyone, but the house was silent. Well, not silent. There was a sound coming from the kitchen. A wet, rhythmic thwack. I walked into the kitchen, and I almost lost my mind. There was a family, a mom, a dad, and a little girl sitting at the dinner table. They were looping. The mom was lifting a fork to her mouth, but there was no food on it. The dad was laughing, but his head was tilted back so far his neck was snapping. But the girl was the source of the sound. She was slamming her forehead against the wooden table. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Her forehead was completely flattened, a mess of pulp and hair. But there was no blood. Instead, thick, black, oily pixels were leaking out of the wound and staining the tablecloth. Every time her head hit the table, the entire room would stutter. The wallpaper would change from floral to solid red, and then back again. I tried to grab her, to stop her, but when my hand touched her shoulder, Her skin felt like a bag of warm marbles. She turned to look at me, and her face, God, it was like a corrupted JPEG. Her features were all in the wrong places. An ear was where her mouth should be, and her eyes were stacked vertically on her forehead. She opened the ear mouth and spoke, but it wasn't a voice. It was a data dump. My phone, which was in my pocket, started screaming with notification sounds, hundreds of them a second. I pulled it out, and the screen was just scrolling through thousands of lines of code. But I could read parts of it. It wasn't computer code. It was life logs. Subject 4402. Heart rate 0. Synaptic response. Error. Memory leak detected. I looked back at the family. They were all staring at me now. Their textures were failing fast. The dad's skin was turning into a checkerboard pattern of black and purple. The mom's hair was stretching out in long, sharp needles that pierced the ceiling. Then the dad stood up. His legs didn't move. He just glided across the floor like he was being dragged by an invisible cursor. He got right in my face. The smell was unbearable now, that ozone and rotting meat scent, but concentrated. He didn't have teeth. His mouth was filled with rows of what looked like copper heat sinks, vibrating so hard they were glowing red. Vile, corrupted, he droned. The sound didn't come from his throat. It came from the air around him. Delete. Redundant. Data. He reached for my throat, and his fingers elongated, turning into jagged, low-poly claws. I scrambled back, tripping over the nothingness where the kitchen floor met the gray void. I fell out of the house and onto the gray expanse. It didn't feel like ground. It felt like walking on stiff foam. I looked back, and the house was shrinking, not moving away, but literally getting smaller, like someone was scaling it down in a program. Within seconds, it was the size of a dollhouse, then a speck, then gone. Now, it's just me and the void. But I'm not alone. In the distance, I can see piles. I walked toward one, and I wish I hadn't. They're trash heaps of discarded assets. I found a pile of human limbs, hundreds of them, all fused together into a pulsing mound. They weren't dead. The fingers were still twitching, trying to grasp at the gray air. I found a head, just a head, sitting on the gray foam. It was the guy from the streetlight in part 1. He was still blinking. He looked at me, and his mouth, which was back to a normal shape, whispered, "It's not a simulation. It's a recycling bin." Then his head dissolved into white noise and blew away like dust. I'm looking at my own arm again. The transparency is moving up to my elbow. I can see the bones, but the bones are glowing with that yellow light. I think I'm being flagged for deletion. I can hear something moving in the gray void. Something big. Something that sounds like a hard drive spinning up to 1,000,000 RPMs. I didn't run. I couldn't even if I wanted to. My feet have basically merged with the gray foam of the void. And every time I try to lift a leg, it feels like I'm tearing Velcro made of my own nerves. This is where I realized that the glitches aren't accidents. They're optimization. The massive spinning sound I heard, it wasn't a machine. It was a janitor. Out of the gray haze, this thing emerged. It was about 15 feet tall, but it didn't have a solid shape. It looked like a cluster of human torsos all stitched together into a sphere, spinning at a terrifying speed. As it rolled toward the trash heaps of limbs I saw earlier, it made this wet, grinding sound like a wood chipper filled with organs. It reached the pile of twitching arms, and it didn't just eat them. It absorbed them. The limbs were pulled into the spinning mass, their fingers locking into the other bodies, becoming part of the sphere. I could hear the voices of 100 different people screaming in unison. But the screams were truncated, cut off every half second by a burst of static. Ah, static. Help, static. Stop, static. I realized then what the recycling bin really meant. This world isn't ending. It's just being compressed because the hardware can't handle the load anymore. We aren't being deleted. We're being zipped. I looked down at my chest. My hoodie was gone. Not like I took it off, but like the texture had simply failed to load, leaving my torso a flat, featureless gray. But then, a window opened in my own skin. A literal, rectangular hole in my chest. I looked inside, and I didn't see ribs or a heart. Inside my chest, there was a tiny, microscopic version of that guy from the streetlight, curled into a fetal position. He was screaming, but his voice was so high-pitched, it sounded like a dog whistle. He was wired into my vessels with glowing yellow filaments. I'm not a person. I'm a container for someone else's data. And now that I'm glitched, the container is breaking open. The janitor sphere stopped spinning and looked at me. It didn't have eyes, but all the mouths on its surface stopped screaming and turned in my direction. They all opened at once, and a thick, black liquid started pouring out. The same oily pixels the little girl was bleeding. Buffer underrun, the mouths whispered. The sound was so loud, it vibrationally dislocated my jaw. The sphere started to unspool. The bodies began to detach, reaching out for me with elongated, low poly arms. One of the arms grabbed my flickering pinky. The moment it touched me, I didn't feel pain. I felt memory loss. I saw a person. I forgot the color of my mother's eyes. I forgot the smell of rain. I forgot my first grade teacher's name. Every time they touch me, they're stealing sectors of my hard drive. They're harvesting my humanity to use as raw processing power for the next patch. I managed to crawl away, dragging my heavy, gray void legs. But I passed another glitch that made me want to rip my own eyes out. It was a playground, identical to the one I saw before, but it was inverted. The trees were growing downward into a black pit, and the kids on the swings, they were being swung by their own intestines, which were hooked to the top bar. They were laughing, but their laughter was playing backward. I found a phone booth sitting in the middle of a field of white noise. I ran inside, hoping for a dial tone, a connection, anything. I picked up the receiver and shoved it against my ear. It wasn't a person on the other end. It was the admin. The simulation has exceeded its allocated life cycle, the voice said. It sounded like my own voice, but perfectly flat. The soul data is being condensed for the 2026 reboot. Thank you for your service as a placeholder. The phone booth started to shrink. The glass began to press against my shoulders. I can feel my bones starting to clip through each other, ribs sliding behind my spine without breaking, just overlapping, like layers in a design program. I'm being folded. I'm being packed away. I have one part left. I can see a light at the edge of the void, but it's not heaven. It looks like a giant, glowing power button. My memory is almost gone. I'm typing this using the last 2% of my manual dexterity before my hands turn into solid blocks of gray geometry. The janitor sphere didn't grab me. It didn't have to. The admin voice from the phone booth was right. I'm being condensed. I watched as the gray void around me started to tile. The horizon line began to fold upward, like a giant piece of paper being creased by an invisible hand. The sky and the ground are meeting, and I'm caught in the middle of the fold. I looked at the power button in the distance. It's not a button. It's a lens. As the world folded, I got a glimpse through that lens. I saw the outside. It wasn't a lab with scientists or some high-tech server room. It was a room made of pulsing red organic walls, just like the flesh tech I dreamed about before I forgot my own name. There was a being sitting there, but it wasn't a god. It was a massive, bloated creature that looked like a human brain covered in wet, blinking eyes. It was wearing a headset. The headset was plugged directly into a hole in its own skull. And the wires coming out of that headset, they were made of the same yellow filaments I found inside my own chest. We aren't a simulation running on a computer. We are a dream being fed to a dying creature to keep its brain active. We are neural entertainment. The glitches happen because the creature is having a stroke. The janitor is its immune system trying to clean up the dead brain cells, which happen to be our houses, our families, and our lives. I can feel the final compression starting now. It's the most vulgar, sickening sensation I've ever felt. My internal organs are being merged. My stomach is sliding into my lungs. My heart is being flattened into a disc to save space. I can feel my subject data being squeezed through a straw. I saw Dave one last time. He was floating in the fold, but he wasn't Dave anymore. He was just a long, vertical strip of skin and teeth, spinning like a top. He hissed at me as he passed, a sound like steam escaping a pipe. New build coming. No more skin. The admin voice returned, echoing inside my skull, since I don't have ears anymore. Reboot initiated. All redundant consciousness will be used as background noise. Enjoy the static. The lens is closing. The red room outside is fading. The last thing I saw was that being reaching up with a clawed hand to scratch its brain head, and its fingernail scraped across the sky of my world, leaving a giant, jagged tear that leaked black, oily pixels over everything. I'm becoming the static now. I'm the white noise you hear when the room is too quiet. I'm the ring in your ears. I'm the reason you sometimes walk into a room and forget why you went in there. That's just the admin deleting your current task to save RAM. If you're reading this, look at your hands. Do the lines on your palms look a little too straight? Is the reflection in the mirror lagging by a millisecond? The 2026 patch is being installed. They're removing the free will module to fix the memory leaks. I'm gone. I'm just a string of text now. A placeholder that lived too long. The screen is going black. Not the phone screen. My eyes. 01 00010001001001001. Log off.